Hi BookTubers, I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Read Stuff. It's Sunday and I am about to do my weekly wrap up. And I've had such a good week. Such a good week. First week of May, but to start with, there was the end of April and I finished this Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. This translation is by Christine Donaher, and to say I loved this is the understatement of this year so far. I thought it was fabulous. I had never read it. I had never seen the stage, the musical. I had never seen a film of it, so I was, coming to it semi-blind because obviously over the course of the years I've picked up some information. What I didn't realise was how beautifully Hugo draws the characters in this book. Um, it's divided into 5 books. My favourites were books 1 and books 4, I think. Um, I absolutely loved the scenes through the sewers and the scenes on the barricades. Um, I wasn't that enamoured with the relationship of with the end of the relationship, not the end of the relationship. It was, they were married, Cosette and Marius. I enjoyed their relationship while it wasn't a relationship. Um, but that part of the book was probably my least favourite. What I loved the most is the way Hugo introduced characters at length and then fleshed them out. And over the course of the 1,300 pages of this novel, you really got to know all the people involved. And it was fab. I just loved it. I will certainly read some more. I will certainly read this again. Um, so that was the beginning of my week, finishing this off. So that set it up on a great footing. Then, of course, we get to May. Now, I've done these are the events I intend to take part in May. So I launched straight into them. Um, did I read? Let me just get my book. The majority of these, the majority of my reading this week has been for middle grade May and horror mayhem. So let's go through some of those and then I'll tell you what I'm reading this week. And we've got some colouring in to do. So, middle grade May, I'll put the details for all the events down below. Um, there are 17 prompts, 4 each from 3 of the 4 hosts and 5 from another. I read The Magic Finger by Roald Dahl. I'm pretty sure I must have read this to my kids, but to be honest, I didn't remember it. It's great fun. Roald Dahl's great fun. It's got a lovely anti-hunting message. Um, Thoroughly enjoyed it. And this one I am going to put under the short story prompt, which is one of the prompts from Lee at Dark Roots Creations. Then I read this, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'd never read it. This one is going down as she calls it Tourist Trap, a book that everybody's read, from Elizabeth at Lizzie Fay Loves Books. This one is a purse full of tales. It's folk tales from Korea, and it's retold by Chan Young Kim and David Carter. This also ticks, well, two of my personal project monthly lists, in that they're stories from another country, and it's a book of children's stories. But this is another one of Lee from Dark Roots Creations prompts, and this ticks the prompt, a story from another continent. These were fun. There was one in there that was very similar to Cinderella, but that had it had a bit that came afterwards. Cinderella didn't live happily ever after with the prince. Um, I thought that was quite interesting. There was there were a couple of instances of bad language in here, which I thought was probably unsuitable for kids. So it made me wonder then whether this was actually for kids. In one case, someone is called a bastard, and in another one, this guy is trying to avoid capture by two thieves, and it actually says he's up a tree, he's hiding up a tree, and it actually says in there that he pisses on their head. Now, that's not appropriate children language, but the really weird thing, there's a number of tales in here. I didn't count them, but look, there's a fair few. Three of these tales started with a line in the first sentence. There was a bit that said that the story happened when tigers were still smoking. And I just thought that was really odd, especially as there was then no mention of either tigers or smoking. Thought that was strange, but it was a bit like they'd introduced it as, once upon a time. Um, but they were fun. I enjoyed them. So that's three things checked off the list for middle grade May. I've got 17 to do. I could double up on some of them, but for the time being, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, horror mayhem. I have had such fun with this week. To start with, the weekly prompt was local horror. So, I started with, and also these are often, a lot of these are going to be short. So, they're going to be novellas or short stories, or I did read a full novel, but mostly they're short. It's short stuff. I started off with this. I live in Nottingham. Nottinghamshire folk tales seem to be a good place to start. This is by Pete Castle, and there was an entire chapter which was called Tales from the Dark Side, and these included a couple of ghost stories, the devil throwing stones, um, a black dog story. I quite like a black dog story. And one called The Gypsy Boy, which is about a gypsy boy who hears about this woman in Nottingham living in a big house, is looking for a husband. he goes, knocks on the door, instantly marries her. Well, he marries her the same day. Discovers that she disappears out of bed suspiciously in the middle of the night. So after a couple of weeks of pretending to sleep, he follows her. He's husband number 8, and when she leaves in the evening, she's off to visit husbands number 1 to 7, who are in the graveyard, and she's eating their bodies as they rot. That's always good fun, isn't it? Book number 2 for local horror was a novel called The Chalk Man. It's by C.J. Tudor. It's not based locally. In fact, it's based down on the south coast, but C.J. Tudor is from Nottingham. That counts as far as I'm concerned. Really enjoyed this. I've got another one of hers. I think it's called The Taking of Annie Thorne. But this is the first of hers that I've read. And it is one of these ones that flits backwards and forwards between modern day and a point in the past. And in this case, it's mid 1980s and it's 2016. And it follows the events that happen to a group of friends, and there are a number of lads and one girl. People die. It's not a crime novel because different people are responsible for different things. I really enjoyed it. I read it really quickly and loved it. Now, the rest of my reading for this week has been horror mayhem, and some of them are for the bingo cards, and some of them for the bingo card, and some of them aren't. But let me just talk you through what I've read, because it's been so much fun. So, I started off, actually, these aren't in any particular order. I read some Arthur Conan Doyle, and I read 3 stories from Tales of Terror. It turns out that one of those is also a local story, and it's called The Terror of Blue John Gap, and it's about a monster living in a cave in near Castleton in Derbyshire, which is just up the road from us. Blue John is a semi-precious stone, and it's only found in that one place in Derbyshire. In fact, that's the stone. And this is about a monster living in the caves and someone who goes to investigate it. I loved it. It was a great story. I love the way Sir Arthur Conan Doyle writes anyway, but I have actually never read anything other than the Sherlock Holmes stories. So I read The Cases of Lady Sannox, The Terror of Blue John Gap, and The Brazilian Cat. There's still some more for me to read. I might tackle some of those next week. I also read The Monkey's Paw by W. W. Jacobs, and that, for those who don't know, is about a mysterious monkey's paw that is meant to grant wishes. In fact, it does grant 3 wishes to its possessor, but you've really got to be careful what you wish for. I read a couple of stories from H.P. Lovecraft's Eldritch Tales. I read The Alchemist and The Beast in the Cave. I'm quite enjoying Beast in the Cave. Then I read Baron Edward Lytton Bulmer Lytton. Baron Edward Lytton Bulmer Lytton. Apparently he is the man who is responsible for the expression, the pen is mightier than the sword. He's also responsible for a book called The Haunted and the Haunters. Yes. The Haunted and the Haunters, otherwise entitled The House and the Brain. And this is about a haunted house and a skeptic. And uh, this house, the owner of it can't get anyone to rent it. He's inherited it. He doesn't know what to do with it. Anyone who stays there, I think the maximum people who stay there is 3 nights. Everybody else leaves before the second night. And this guy goes in to try and figure out what's going on. And it's great. I loved it. That was about it. It had ghosts. It had a bit of alchemy in there. It had secret rooms. Lots of fun. I really like these old classic Gothic style ones. I have purchased a book called. Oh, that's not it. That was my grandson dancing. This one, the Monster Mega Pack. And from there, I read 2 stories so far. One was called The Worm by David H. Keller. And that was about a gigantic worm and a miller. And the miller didn't come off very nicely in the end. It was first published in a publication called Amazing Stories in 1929. The second one I read, and this is for the personal horror, I hate spiders. This one was called The Spectre Spiders, and it was by William J. Wintle, and it was originally published in 1921 in a publication called Ghost Gleams. And this was about a guy who was a moneylender, lived in a big house quite a way out because obviously money lenders and the customers need a bit of privacy sometimes. He wasn't a particularly nice man, and his house becomes haunted by spiders. And there's an honestly, it made my flesh crawl. Piece in there where he is walking across. He's got out of bed and he's treading on a bed of huge spiders, feeling their bodies. It was, yeah. I've done that one now. I'm not reading any more spider books. Right, what else do we have on here? Graphic novel. This is a graphic novel by David Pipose, Alex Alex Cormack, and Justin Birch. It's called The Devil That Wears My Face. This was great. This was the story of a priest who specializes in exorcism, and he goes off to a castle where the count there, his son has been possessed by the devil, and they've got his son locked in a dungeon, chained to the walls. So far, he's killed 3 or 4 priests who have come to exorcise him. The devil has killed them, but he's in the son's body. And during the process of the priest trying to exorcise the devil, he goes into the son's body and the devil goes into his, acts very normal, gets out of the castle, and is wandering around wearing the priest's face. Loved it. We also have, what else do we have? This one I'm going to put down as indie horror. Oh, I'm not getting this right at all, am I? Short Horror Stories, Volume 5 by Richard van Gramberg, who appears to be an English writer publishing independently. Um, they were mainly about sort of like a paranormal investigator, and they were okay. Um, had I read them on their own, I think I would have enjoyed them because I was reading them with so much good stuff. Sort of, yeah. Um, I've been listening to old time English stories from the Lock and Key Library, and that was where Baron Edward Lytton Bulmer Lytton came from. There were a couple of Dickens in there as well that I enjoyed. One was The Signalman, and the other one was The Haunted House. I think that was it from that one. Oh, I also listened to this. I listened to a couple of stories. Keep doing that. Listen to a couple of stories from this one. Joyce Carol Oates, The Doll Master, and Other Tales of Terror. I listened to a couple of from those. I did like The Doll Master. I'm going to put that down as a killer kid. It's about a kid who collects dolls. First of all, his cousin dies. His cousin is only 3. She dies of leukemia. She has a nice doll. He takes it and keeps it. And although his parents know and his aunt knows, they sort of don't talk about the fact that he's taken this doll. But then his dad takes this doll away a couple of years later and makes him have an action hero instead. And he doesn't want an action hero, he wants dolls. Um, he has an imaginary friend. Imaginary or supernatural? It's not specified. But this friend encourages him to collect dolls that he finds. So the first found doll he takes home and he sticks in the back of a disused stable and keeps it there. He acquires over the years a number of dolls, numbers moving up into double figures. Keeps all of them in the back of the stable. I think I'd only got to the second doll when I realised he was actually killing children and taking them home. Um, it was still good, and there is a bit of a twist at the end. Um, yeah, so I'm not going to put that under dolls because it's not a doll. What else do we have? Oh, this is called Horror House of Perversion. It's by Carl John Lee, and it is described as an extreme horror novella. So it's going down under extreme horror. It was quite extreme. There's a reunion of a group of friends who haven't seen each other for 20 years. And our narrator is one of the group of friends, and he really doesn't want to go. But his girlfriend persuades him to. So they're all meeting up at this country lodge. And misfortune occurs to them along the way. There are one, two, three, I think there's 4 blokes and a girl in the group of original friends. Turns out that many years before, while they were at college, they were drunk as skunks, they were high on all sorts of drugs. 3 of the boys had raped and killed a fellow student. One of the other lads knew what was happening and walked away and did nothing. And the girl took photographs of what happened. All I can say is karma's a bitch. Revenge is a dish best served cold. There's lots of body horror in this. Lots of people die. That one, that one, that one, that one. Now, I also have a book of botanical folk tales that I read a couple of. Oh, and then I read Franz Kafka. I read Metamorphosis. Not read it before. I loved it. I thought it was great. It's quite disturbing. You wonder how the family lasts so long feeding stuff to this. Anyway, I don't know what I'm going to put that down as. Oh, yes, I do. I think I'm going to put it down as translated. So, I'm going to cross off some of the things on this bingo board. Some of them I'm not going to cross off. So, I definitely did the graphic novel, which The Devil Wears My Face. So, that one's gone. Killer Animals. The Brazilian Cat by Arthur Conan Doyle. The Worm. Was there another one? I'll just stick with those for the time being. So, Killer Animals is crossed off. Next up, H.P. Lovecraft's The Alchemist from the Eldritch Tales is a 600-year curse on a family that live in this big castle, and all of the heirs to the castle and the estate die at the age of 32. So that's going down as a curse. The Dollmaster by Joyce Carol Oates is going down as evil children because when he first starts the killing, he's only about 13. So he's still a child and he's not very nice. Then, Haunted House. We've got The Haunted House by Charles Dickens. We also have The Haunted and the Haunters by Lytton Bullman Lytton. So that's a haunted house ticked off. Personal, that Spectre Spider. Just the squelching of the spiders. Even though they were ghost spiders. I'm crossing off personal horror. Which is there. Then, Horror House of Perversion. It says it's an extreme horror novella, so it must be extreme. It was quite gross, to be fair. Richard van Gramberg and his Short Horror Stories, Volume 5. That's going down as indie horror. And Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka is going down as translated. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. That's exactly where I should be, isn't it? I'm also crossing off the local horror. Yeah, 9 times 4 is 36. That's exactly where I should be. So, this week I have also started Revelations of Divine Love, which is the first book written in English by a woman, and it is the writings of Julian of Norwich, who was an anchoress in the 1340s. I have also started reading Femina by Dr. Janina Ramirez, who is a broadcaster. This is subtitled A New History of the Middle Ages Through the Women Written Out of It. So far, I've only read the introduction and the first chapter, which mentions Julian of Norwich, among other things, and it's really readable. I am group reading The Terror. Now, I've started it. Some people in the group have finished it already, but this is my book for week 4 of Horror Mayhem. So I'm not bothered when I finish that. The book I'm reading for next week for Horror Mayhem is Carrie, by Stephen King, because the film there's a film movies prompt for next week. Don't know what I'm going to be reading for everything else. We'll be doing some more work on the BookTube prize though, and starting the Georgian readathon. So I'm sorry that was so long, but there were a lot of bingo slots to colour in. Thank you for popping by. If you're taking part in any of these events or any other events, let me know what you're reading. I'll put details of the events down below. Thank you very much for stopping by. Please like and subscribe, and I shall speak to you again very soon. Bye for now.